G'day, Bomber fans. What a goofy and wacky and unpredictable night one of the draft that was. It was a lot to really comprehend. I was over on stream with Bomber Banter, Fiona on Bomber Banter, literally just a few minutes ago we wrapped up, and now I'm recording this so you guys have my live reactions to our new bombers. We've got 3 new bombers to talk about. We've got a bomber that maybe slipped through our fingers as well, so there is a bit to get through in this video today. I've got some raw reactions, and then in the next few days, sporadically, I will also be releasing some profile videos on all the draftees individually. So let's just get into it. So yeah, the draft began. We obviously completed that pick swap with the Carlton Football Club. That was pick 9 and 43 from Carlton, going to Essendon for 21, 27 and 30. Pick 43 has now slid up the order and is now 36 on night 2 of the draft, which is important because we didn't end up using it to match a bit on Adam Sweid. So we'll talk about that a bit later, but just remember that on night 2 of the draft, we have one selection, and that is pick 36. But yeah, really the draft started with Richmond. You know, that Richmond combo of selections, I don't think anyone in their right mind would have predicted. That was really surprising, the fact that they not only passed on Xavier Taylor, but Sullivan Robey as well. They ended up selecting Sam Cumming and Sam Grill, which threw me for I don't know what was going on at that point, but it obviously left the Bombers with some big decisions to make. We had some players on the board who we really wanted and were really interested in. We were going to have to make some hard decisions in passing over players, and I didn't think that was going to be the case. There was obviously Dyson Sharp, Xavier Taylor, Lockie Doveston, Sullivan Robey, Jacob Farrow. These guys, you know, the Bombers were all putting a lot of time into. Aiden Schubert as well. But in the end, with pick 9, the Bombers selected Sullivan Robey, and gee, that sounds good, doesn't it? That feels good to say, because this is the guy I think we were all really wanting. You know, Sullivan Robey. He's not only an Essendon fan and that big draft bolter that came out of absolutely nowhere to be a first round contender, but just his attitude and his determination and his work rate and the type of player that he is, being that big bodied midfielder, I think it's great. You know, this is the player that I think was probably being talked about in the comments the most in my videos. Everyone's talking about how we can trade up to pick 2 to get Robey. You know, how can we, you know, change our draft hand around to get Sullivan Robey on the list? You know, Robey or bust, these types of comments. And in the end, we didn't actually have to do anything to our draft hand. Robey just somehow slid to us. You know, Richmond passed on him, which I think is... I didn't predict that. I didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't think we'd have access to both Robey and Taylor and Sharp and all these guys, but we did. So, yeah, welcome Sullivan Robey to the Essendon Football Club. I'll talk about him more in a profile video in the coming days, but that's just an awesome pick. That already makes this draft a win for me. Like, this is the guy I think after Willem Dersma that I really wanted on the list. You guys would know that. I've rated him really highly since he burst onto the scene, Sullivan Robey. So the fact that he is in Essendon colours, in the colours that he, you know, supports, black and red, I think that's fantastic. So, welcome Sullivan Robey to the Bombers. The night started off in a fun way. If pick 9 was fun, pick 10 was funky, because Essendon selected Jacob Farrow with pick 10, and there's a bit to this. I'll talk about why that is in a second. But Jacob Farrow is a player, you know, he's that classy ball user out of the back half. He's a lovely kick of the footy. Got a nice frame that he can, you know, hopefully fill out a bit and potentially turn him into a bit of a midfielder. But I think to start his career, he's going to be in the back half or maybe on a wing a little bit. But yeah, Jacob Farrow pick 10, I don't think anyone would have predicted, you know, especially with Taylor and Sharp available at the same time. At first, when it was read out, you know, Jacob Farrow pick 10, I was confused, but then I remembered, you know, Melbourne are picking after us. That's a player they've put a lot of time into, Jacob Farrow, and if it wasn't Melbourne taking him, you know, Hawthorn could have potentially traded up to get him with one of those Melbourne selections. Really, when you're looking at pick 10, it's actually pick 13. And I know that sounds odd, but what Essendon I think we're trying to do here, and I might be just really wrong, but what I think the plan here was pick the player that Melbourne wanted the most and leave the player on the board that Melbourne wanted the least. So if I'm thinking of who Melbourne would want most out of Sharp, Farrow and Sullivan Robey, the one I think they'd want the least is Dyson Sharp, given the fact that they want those athletic type players that they ended up getting anyway with picks 11 and 12. So I think Essendon selecting Farrow here is as good as selecting at pick 13, if you get me, for that regard. I think if we had left him on the board and taken Dyson Sharp, we wouldn't have been able to select Jacob Farrow with pick 13. I think Melbourne would have snapped him up and got that classy ball user. So I think the Bombers are actually, you know, really sneakily quite smart here, because I don't think the players that Melbourne selected in Pickett and Xavier Xavier Taylor were the ones that Essendon were wanting with that pick 9 and 10, given we already had Sullivan Robey for that high upside. So I don't know if I'm correct in thinking this and assuming this, but I'm good. I think this is pretty smart business from Matt Rosa. And you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. But I think Matt Rosa selecting Jacob Farrow this early is because if he was selected, if he was left on the board for those Melbourne picks, and if Sharp was taken instead, then I think Farrow would have been taken, and we wouldn't have been able to get this draft haul that we got in Farrow, Sharp, and Sullivan Robey. So I think personally this is some good business by the Bombers. And with pick 13, it was really between Lockie Doverston and Dyson Sharp, and the Bombers ended up going with someone that I think you guys will really like in Dyson Sharp. He's been a popular figure in the comments. Of course, there was that potential for a small forward in Lockie Doverston, and I think if other things had gone a certain way, then that would have been the case. And I said that with my prediction. But with the players being left on the board for our picks that we had, the Bombers obviously left Dyson Sharp through those Melbourne picks and ended up taking him just a couple of selections later. And I think this is a really great selection. You guys would know that I've got my reservations on Dyson Sharp as a draft prospect, given the upside, and I don't know if his ceiling is quite at the level of, even a Farrow or a Sullivan Robey. But if you draft those high upside players in Farrow and Robey and then have Dyson Sharp, who is just bankable, I think that's a perfect blend. And you're doing a few things here. You're not only getting a variety of different, players that can project into different ranges in the future in terms of just quality, but you're getting different positions and different needs for each position as well. Like, I look at Dyson Sharp as someone who is a bit Joe Watson-like, and we haven't had that in quite a while. I think he's got some deficiencies on the outside, but on the inside, he is as good as anyone, better than anyone in this draft. And, you look at players that we've drafted in the past for the midfield, they've all got tools to be good inside midfielders, but I think Dyson Sharp already is a good inside midfielder, and that's the difference, I think, with Dyson Sharp and other prospects. So already there, you've got picks 9, 10, and 13 being taken on Sullivan Robey, Dyson Sharp, and Jacob Farrow. 3, good frames, taller players, high upside, some are bankable. I think it's a really good blend. Good ball users, good athletes, some not so good athletes, but some good footballers. It's good. I really like that. I don't think I would have ever predicted we would take that blend of players, to be honest. I didn't think we'd ever take that trio, but when you think about it and when you look at it, I mean, it makes sense. These are players we've been linked to all year, and the fact that some of them were available for our picks in Robey, I think that's brilliant. Obviously Sharp sliding through those Melbourne selections. I mean, it makes sense. And the kicker here is the fact that we took Dyson Sharp with the pick that Hawthorn offered us at first for that Merritt trade. In the end, we keep Merritt, we bring Sharp into the club, and the funny thing is, I think Dyson Sharp is a potential captain in the future. Like, he's been a captain all year for South Australia. He's a terrific leader, and he has been all year. He's obviously an Essendon fan as well. Yeah, that's a really interesting trio of players. Now, unfortunately, it's not all good news, because bloody Fremantle went and put a bid on Adam Sweid with the last pick in the first round, pick 25. Unfortunately, if we would have matched a bid then, we would have gone into deficit next year, meaning that our first round selection in next year's draft would have slid down the order and been, worse than what it should have been if we're depending on where we finish on the ladder. So the Bombers, unfortunately, as we said, we were never guaranteed to match bids on Sweid or Hussein El-Achkar, depending on when a bid came, and a bid came at the wrong time. Pick 25 was not ideal given the selections we had. We moved up the order to get really good players in the draft, which we did, but that came at the expense of our academy duo, or one of our academy duos. So Adam Sweid is off to Fremantle. He's been selected by the Dockers. We didn't match a bid. This is disappointing. I think this is, it's tough because, in ideal world, you take 3 really high quality players, Sweid and Hussein El-Achkar, but that wasn't the case. It just means that we're going to have to select someone else in the open draft. I would have really liked Sweid on the list because I think he's a player that you guys would have really enjoyed watching, and I've really enjoyed watching him this year as well. But unfortunately, the question will be, I guess, is Sweid worth losing out or losing spots in next year's draft in the first round for? Probably not. That's the way I see it. I think the Bombers probably made the right decision not matching the bid. Does it sting a little bit? Of course. Like, Sweid, I think is a really decent footballer and a decent option in the forward half of the field. But yeah, unfortunately, our draft hand to improve it the way we did and get Dyson Sharp in through the doors with that pick, I mean, it cost us Adam Sweid, and I think that's probably a fair price to pay for moving up the order the way we did. But yeah, Adam Sweid heads off to the Dockers. Hussein El-Achkar, he is still open on the draft board. there's every chance he falls through to the rookie draft, which would, be easier for us. It would mean we can just select him there for free as a Category B rookie. But unfortunately, one half of that, little iconic duo, the good mates in Adam Sweid and Hussein El-Achkar is off to Perth out west. So that is unfortunate. It's not all good news for the Bombers. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that now. But what it does mean is that we didn't match a bid with that Carlton selection that we got, which is now pick 36 in the draft. So there are 10 more selections till we are back on the clock, and I suspect that we will likely take a player tomorrow night, given the fact we've only taken 3. We've got, a further 2 senior list spots available. And the good news is there are quite a few players available still. You've got Ollie Greaves, who I don't think we'll take given our, our strength in the midfield already in this draft. Harley Barker's been taken. He's on here, but unfortunately, he was taken by Geelong. Noah Hibbins-Hargraves, Jevon Philippou, Archie Ludowick, Blake Threadgold, Louis Emmett, Leon Kickett, Rory Wright. There are some players that the Bombers could be looking to take here. Hugo Mukunda, Max Kondagianis. So I think there are definitely options for the Bombers later in the draft, and I'll be live reacting with True Footy with Dylan and Jesse over on the True Footy channel tomorrow night. But yeah, the good news is the Bombers, I guess, we're active tomorrow night as well, which I didn't really think would be the case given how much we had in that first round of the draft. But yeah, I think, you lose out Adam Sweid. Obviously, you'd rather him than someone else in this later range of the draft, but adding Dyson Sharp in the list with that extra pick and being able to take someone late, a potential slider, hopefully someone who slides down the order that we like, that would be ideal. We can attack a different position and need. We obviously do need some speed potentially, and maybe someone not in that midfield. We've added a few midfielders, maybe someone in the forward half a bit more, and of course the prospect of Hussein El-Achkar sliding through to the rookie draft would really help as well. But yeah, I mean, overall you can't not be happy with that first night of the draft. Like that was as good a result as you could have hoped for. I think I wasn't thinking Sullivan Robey would be available for our picks, and if he was, I thought it would be at the expense of a Dyson Sharp or someone like that. But the fact that we get Sullivan Robey in through the doors, we get Dyson Sharp to help him as that bankable midfielder. One's really high upside, lower ceiling, one's really maybe low upside, higher ceiling, so you've got a good blend of bankable and a project player. But you also get Jacob Farrow, who's that ball user. Some would have asked for Josh Lindsay. I agree, that was definitely possible, but I think there's probably more scope to Jacob Farrow in the future in the midfield as well, which might be what the Bombers were looking at, maybe even the wing. But I think either way you get a good ball user in the draft as well, which many were calling out for. I think there's a lot of areas that we clearly address. We address the midfield, our ball use, athleticism, the contest work, and there's still 2 more picks for us to address other needs in potentially as well, which is good. And we don't hurt our draft end for next year by moving picks into match a bid for Adam Sweid, so the 2026 draft end is still really strong as well. Night 1 of the draft is a success. I think there's 2 clubs that really won out for me, in my eyes, and I think that's West Coast and Essendon. I think we both did really, really well to get the players that we wanted and stay strong in other areas of the field. I'm happy. I mean, I guess you guys are happy. I think we're all happy. I don't think there's a single Essendon fan disappointed. The one thing that I'm probably disappointed by is, Xavier Taylor. I really like Xavier Taylor as well. But I mean, if losing out on Xavier Taylor comes at the expense of Sullivan Robey, who I prefer as a prospect anyway, that's fine by me. I think we've got a really good blend of players in night 1 of the draft, and I'm really excited to talk about them all in individual videos throughout the week. I'll be releasing sporadic, videos, maybe 1 each day on our draft prospects. Remember, I will be in Melbourne, so it might take a day or 2 for me to actually get started on that, given the fact I leave in 12 hours. Geez. No, but cheers for watching, guys. That's just my raw reactions to the draft and how it played out. I thought it played out really, really well for the Bombers. Obviously, a bit disappointing with Sweid, but for the most part, it was an excellent night 1 of the draft. I think Rosa did an excellent job. Oh, I also forgot to say, by the way, I should have talked about this, but there were clubs coming for Essendon's pick 13 when we were live on the board. The Adelaide Crows offered a pick 22, which was their first rounder, and a future first rounder to the Bombers for Essendon's pick 13 to take Dyson Sharp. In the end, we said no and took Dyson Sharp anyway, and I think that's good because obviously, pick 22, that's nothing. And Adelaide's future first is probably going to be around that range next year as well, if they're as good as we think they could be, given the fact they were the minor premiers in 2025. So yeah, that's all, Bomber fans. Cheers for watching. I'm going to go sleep. I'm going to go sleep because I've been in front of this bloody camera all day yapping on. Cheers for watching, guys. Make sure you go check out Bomber Banter's stream again if you want to rewatch our live reactions to each pick, and head to True Footy tonight for our live reaction to night 2 of the draft. But that is all. Cheers for watching. Like, subscribe, and as always, go Bombers.